Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode number 5. We are your host. My name is Davey.
My name's John, and this is Overland Weekly, the best in Overland for the past week.
Last 2 months, whatever it's been. So if you've stuck with us till episode number 5, you know it's been a couple of months, and unfortunately that little thing called life and making a living, that particular aspect of it has gotten in the way, and that's kind of important. But we're back, and as we go through this, we've talked about this before, that we're still trying to kind of find the format and find what resonates with people and what's the best for the community. And one thing John and I have talked about is focusing more on that community aspect and the individuals of our community, and trying to get more folks on to tell their story, whether it be a business or an individual or somebody that took an adventure. We want to hear what those stories are. So maybe less of us narrating Instagram videos, as much as I enjoyed that part, and more of telling stories. So with that said, John, have you ever been to Birmingham, Alabama?
I've driven through it.
You've driven through Birmingham. So in Birmingham, over on the right side of Birmingham, on the east side of Birmingham, there's a mountain, Ruffner Mountain. Okay. And so if you go over that mountain, then you've gone over the mountain. And the people in that part of the country, they're very unique with naming all their businesses, right? So there's like over the mountain grocery and over the mountain dentist office, and the dry cleaners. It's all over the mountain, because how do you get there? It's just over the mountain, over that way, over yonder, right? But if you were to open a cruiser shop in that part of the country, then that'd be kind of unique, because Land Cruisers over the mountain, your town over the mountain. So our guest tonight, Cole Stefanek, did just that. Not only did he come up with such a catchy name, but he did open that cruiser shop just east of Birmingham, Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Cole.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
You have done your research on Birmingham too.
Hey, I wondered. So full disclosure, I was Googling over the mountain, and there's 100 different businesses that came up, and I said that must be where that came from.
It is, yeah. It's a local thing for sure, but I thought it was also catchy because people who aren't from here are like, over the mountain. No, that's like an off-road thing,
Yep.
So it works both ways.
I dig it. I had no idea that was the reason for the name. I think it's great. So.
OTM for short.
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah. So, Cole, let me tell folks kind of what I know and how we know each other, and that's really just virtually. For the past 2 or 3 years, there was an Instagram account that got created a couple of years ago, OTM Cruisers, and I followed it, and they followed me, and we kind of chatted about some stuff, and I didn't know if it was a guy or a shop or whatever. They post in these videos where you're like, it almost looked like you were maybe in your driveway or just kind of behind a fence somewhere, and you're like, I've got this 40 today, and I've got this 80, and I'm doing this. And let me tell you the difference between the import and the North American version. And I'm like, I don't know what he's doing, but it's really cool. And it's kind of taken off from there. So before we get into that, let me back up, because I think I know what this answer is going to be, but I'll find out. 5 years ago, where were you? What were you doing for a living? And did the concept of OTM even exist at that point?
Yeah, so 5 years ago was 2018. A little background, I grew up in Birmingham. I went to the University of Alabama, graduated in 2013, and then I moved to Arkansas where I got my first job. That's also where I bought my first Land Cruiser, but we'll get into that a little later. I met my soon-to-be wife. She was actually in town in Little Rock. She was going to Belmont in Nashville at the time. Her family's from Little Rock. And so we started dating long distance, and then I got a promotion to move to Nashville. And so we had been in Nashville for about 4 years. And in 2018, I got a promotion. I was working in IT sales and got a promotion, moved back to Birmingham to cover enterprise accounts. And so we moved, I think it was April of 2018, moved back to Birmingham, and we've been here since. So I have been in IT sales for about 10 years now. And at that time, I definitely had no idea that OTM was ever going to exist. I, at the time, had probably been, I think I'd had like 7 or 8 different Land Cruisers. And it kind of started, I bought my first one, fixed up and worked on it for probably 3 years, and then actually had to sell it to afford the down payment on our first house in Nashville. So that was kind of sad. But yeah,
good cause.
Yeah, OTM had not crossed my mind. I always thought, maybe one day after I retired or got older, I would open up some kind of Land Cruiser shop or do it on the side or something like that. But no, at that point, it had never crossed my mind.
So, with that said, so you say you went to Arkansas, and that's where you bought the first one.
Yep.
So what was it? What was it about cruisers versus any other vehicle?
Yeah, good question. So I think I was 12 to 14-ish, somewhere around that age. My dad bought, it was either a 98 or 9900 series. It was that copper color that's you don't see many of them. And I remember him having that and really not knowing much about them, but he only had it for a couple years. He sold it before I turned 16. But when we were looking for my first car, my dad found an FJ60 in Denver. And my grandmother and uncle had actually lived out there at the time, and they were going to go look at it. But then my mom found out that it didn't have airbags. And so unfortunately, I did not get an FJ60 for my first car. I got a Tahoe. So, yeah, it was kind of weird how I ended up. So I graduated from Alabama, moved to Arkansas. My mom and I went up to go look for an apartment like 2 weeks before I moved up there. And I remember driving down, it's a smaller town, Conway, Arkansas, right outside of Little Rock. And we were driving down the main drag, and I look over in front of this Kroger, and there's this FJ62 on massive TSL Super Swampers. And I'm like, dang, that thing is badass.
Yes,
and I had been kind of looking for something off-roady, that I wanted to do to kind of kill some time, because I knew Arkansas had some pretty cool, the Ozarks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to, try and find something to just keep me busy. And so when I finally moved up there, I went to go look at it. And so it was an FJ62 on your standard old man emu lift. It had 38.5-inch Super Swampers on it somehow. It did not brake. It had no power. It didn't really steer very well. And it was very scary to go over 30 miles an hour. But I bought it, I think, for $2,800. And over the next 3.5 years, I found mud the week before I bought that truck. So I joined MUD in 2013. So I've been a member now for 10 years. And MUD obviously changed my life. Just, that's all I did was read everything. And mm-hmm. I did my first knuckle rebuild and, in my apartment complex, and, it's just history from there. It probably took me 2 weeks to do my first knuckle rebuild then too. I had to wait on Amazon to give me all the tools I didn't know I needed. So
mm-hmm. That's the way it goes. Yeah.
How old were those swampers on that FJ62? Because when you see them like that, there's always not even a date code on the tires, because it was before that was required.
I've got a red 60 right now we can get into later, but I bought it during COVID 2020. It sat in downtown Birmingham for, no joke, 15 or 20 years with the same set. It's got 38.5-inch Super Swampers on it also. And it's like riding on stop signs until they warm up, it's just.
Yep.
So yeah, the ones on the old 62, they were, I'd guess at least 10 or 15 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. But I changed them out for 33s and stock wheels. So
you're in Arkansas, you've picked up this 62. So did the 62 make it from, you said you sold it to buy the house. So when did you get your second one? Was that after you got to Birmingham?
No. So we had moved from Arkansas to Nashville. So I moved with my 62 to Nashville. And then we rented a house for like the first year or so, and then I sold it. We bought our first house, and then my second cruiser was a 96 LX 450 that I got out of Wisconsin. Ooh. That was not as rusty as you would think, but it was factory locked, and it had a lift on it. And so I ended up putting like 37s on it and did a bunch of stuff, but it really wasn't that rusty. And then ended up selling. So I, after I had my 62 and kind of got my feet wet, I was like, you know what, I'm going to start buying these things, get them in rough shape, fix them up, drive them for 6 months or a year, sell it, get another one. And so I've done that 12 times at this point or so, something like that.
Dang, that's awesome.
So let's go back to 2018. You've moved to Birmingham. You're still a tech bro at this point. Mm-hmm. A recently promoted tech bro.
Yep.
What started this conversation? At what? Because I would assume at some point you had to look at your wife and go, "Hey, I've got an idea."
It just kind of happened organically, honestly. So let me give you a little background. When I moved back, so you go on Mud and you go in the clubhouse section, and usually where you live, you want to go see if there's any local cruiser guys. So I had always known about Dixie Land Cruisers. I never had a Land Cruiser, obviously, when I lived in Alabama until I moved back. But I got plugged in with the Arkansas group, Razorback Land Cruisers, and then obviously with STLCA. And I was always kind of posting in the Mud clubhouse section with the Dixieland guys. And so when we moved back, it was a dormant chapter. It was founded in 2008. But from everything I had heard, they weren't doing any meetings, and it had been since like 2013 or 14 since they had really had meetings. So I was like, all right, we're going to get some guys together and we're going to start doing stuff. And so slowly I started posting on I Hate Mud, and we started monthly meetings, and then we started wrench days and would go to different people's houses. And then we started doing day rides. We go to Talladega National Forest, or there's places around here, leaf looking stuff. We go to off-road parks. So Stony Lonesome, Chocolaco, there's a lot of different off-road parks. And then we started doing weekend camping trips. So George Traverse, go to East Tennessee, Western North Carolina. And it really started there because there was a lot of new cruiser guys who really didn't know anything. And so I kind of became the guy that really helped everybody with their trucks when they needed, stuff fixed or they wanted to do stuff. And so really when we would host a wrench day, it was like everybody sit around and drink beer and watch Cole, fix stuff. So that's been like the past 4 years that's happened. And so it really just kind of happened organically. And I can't thank the Dixieland guys. I mean, I honestly would not be here without their support. And I mean, I know you guys probably look on Instagram and Facebook, but people always ask all the time, hey, I'm in Birmingham, or hey, I'm in the Southeast. Where can I take my cruiser to get fixed? And they're like, they're my cheerleaders, as weird as that sounds, but they're the first guys to recommend me. And I just am super thankful and appreciative. So they have they're a huge part of OTM being what it is today.
That's amazing. Yeah, one of my favorite parts about the cruiser community is the community. Mm-hmm. It's much different than any other car community I've been a part of, and we kind of keep our own, and everybody recommends everybody and helps everybody, and it's a true community. So that's amazing. It's kind of like
it is.
They gave to you, you give back to them, kind of thing. So that's awesome.
So Cole, you're having wrench days, or for most folks, it's just an excuse to drink beer while you turn wrenches.
Pretty much.
And
cook out.
So this is, when are we talking about? Is this 2018, 19?
Yeah, this is 2018 through 2021.
Okay.
And we had a solid like 40 guys in Dixieland or so, 40 or 50, and a solid 30 of them who were like regular attenders and stuff.
Okay.
And so really how it turned from wrench days into me thinking, well, I think I'm going to maybe try and make a business out of this. And it's just kind of weird, Davey, because I never really had this big elaborate business plan and was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do. It was, I was always working on other people's stuff or working on my own stuff. And my buddy Drew Davenport, who owns Rustic Mountain Overland, they build overland camping trailers here in Birmingham. He started his business here and had a small shop in Avondale, which is downtown Birmingham. And he had outgrown it and was moving to Irondale, which is right down the road from where we are now. But he was like, hey, I've got this 1,000 square foot shop. Do you know anyone who wants to, sublease it from me? And I got to thinking, and I was like, huh. And so I talked to my wife, and, it was like $500 a month. And I was like, I really think I could cover this with, at the time I thought it was a stretch. I was like, I really think I could at least get a couple trucks to cover $500 a month, to cover this. And I could, I had like 3 or 4 Land Cruisers at the time, so I could at least keep some parked there. That was my excuse. So yeah, I started in that little 1,000 square foot shop. It had AC and heat, which was awesome. And I went and set up my whole desk and computer and worked my day job there every day. And when I didn't have conference calls, because it was COVID, I didn't go meet in person anymore, so I wasn't meeting with all these businesses. And when I didn't have conference calls or meetings, I would wrench on cruisers. And it's really just crazy. It's just blown up from there. And we're on our 3rd shop in less than 2 years. And it's just a huge blessing.
So were you doing when you're doing the day job, are you doing the virtual background thing with this shop behind you so people?
Yeah, it was in a corner. It was literally a cinder block building that wasn't painted, and so it didn't really you couldn't
like
really tell. It's like, oh, it's an unfinished basement, So yeah, it was pretty funny.
So at what point did this become the full-time job?
Well, officially it is still not.
Okay.
A lot of people know, but most people don't know, because I don't really talk about it openly, but I still have my IT job. Okay. OTM really when I first started doing this, I was like, okay, this is just going to be a side gig, and, I'll just make some extra money on the side and do the IT thing. But now that it's turned into like a full-blown full-time job, I'm faced with potentially, doing it full time, hopefully sooner rather than later. So, currently I still have 2 jobs, but my wife and I just had our 2nd boy back in October of 2022. So the nice thing about the company I work for, I am on 6 months of paid paternity leave as of March 1st.
Wow.
So that was the day. It's really all lined up. It's a total God thing, but March 1st was my first day of paternity leave. That was also the first day we moved into our new lead shop. And now I've got 6 months to kind of hopefully get OTM to a point where when I come back, I can say adios and do OTM full time. That's the hope and goal,
That's incredible.
Talk about, and like you said, you're in your 3rd shop in basically 2 years at this point, 3rd location. Talk about some of the challenges when you leased that first shop. Did you have all the tools that you needed? Did you have a lift? Like, where did the equipment come from? You've got to get dealership licenses. All this stuff has to happen, and you're working a full-time job. So yeah, how'd that play out? And while you talk about that, I'm going to pull up some of these pictures here and let these play. I think was this the 2nd shop?
That was our 2nd shop. Yeah. So it used to be an old Steelworkers Union Hall. That was an old stage they had in the background. So we ripped all that out, but the building's from like the 40s or 50s. That was one of our first trucks we got from out of state. There actually a guy from Mississippi brought that over. That's a pretty cool 40. So anyways, yeah, moving to our first, or I say it was me. When I moved into this garage, I brought over my Harbor Freight toolbox that consisted of like 4 drawers and a hodgepodge of tools that I had gathered over, the last 4 years. And, but I had everything because I've had almost every single series, minus a 55. I've pretty much had every single series up to that point, minus a 70, but we weren't really getting in the 70s at that point. So I really had all the specialized tools, that I needed to, and I didn't really have any nice like name brand tools. It was like all the basics. I did not have a lift. The ceiling height was only 10 feet, which you know, it was hard because I'd have to do everything on jack stands, and especially doing like rear main seals and transmission work was not very fun. But I just made it work. Thankfully, the shop, it was, 8-inch wide cinder blocks, and it was heated and cooled. And so, it was pretty comfortable to work in. So it's not like I was sweating my butt off every day. You said dealer's license. So I know on my website, it says sales, service, and outfitting. I want to hopefully get into selling some more trucks this year. But, for them, I'd say 90% of our business is service, maintenance, and outfitting, so I didn't have to get any kind of dealer's license. But, obviously business insurance and, all that fun stuff. And then, like local light business licenses and things like that. So there really wasn't a huge challenge. I'd say the biggest thing was just balancing my day job and OTM, and then also making sure I still had time for my family.
Sure.
So
at what point in the beginning at that first shop, obviously it was just you. So now it's not just you. Now there's an OTM team, I assume.
There is.
And for anybody that's owned or operated a business, that is not only the most crucial, but one of the most difficult pieces is putting that team together. Mm-hmm. So talk about that. Were these folks that you already knew? Were these folks you didn't know? How has this team evolved?
Yeah, great question. So in our first shop, the ones y'all had pictures of, the 1,000 square foot one, I happened to come across a guy through a mutual friend that had just that had just moved to Birmingham, and he used to work at a big Land Cruiser shop in Atlanta for like 10 years and had tons of experience. And my buddy introduced us and was like, hey, you need to go meet Cole. He's just started OTM, and from what he had told me, he was like, yeah, this guy's not interested in a job. He just, wants to meet you. Well, we talked, and he was like, yeah, I think I could start, kind of helping you part-time. So I had this guy with tons of knowledge and tons of experience. That was just a blessing in disguise. And thankfully for my buddy Tristan, who introduced us. But he really taught me a lot, especially like old 40s and 60s stuff, specifically like carburetors and all, that good stuff. So he was the first guy that I had, and he really worked part-time. And then I got to the point where we started growing a little bit and we needed more room. So we moved to our shop in Avondale. It was like 4 blocks over from our old shop, but it was 2,700 square feet. So it was a little over double the size. There was an office space because the place I was in before was just one big room, and my office was in a corner and the trucks were everywhere else. So there was no like cut up, So when this guy started working for me, and I had conference calls and you hear like impacts and stuff in the background, that got very, the mute button game got very good. But so we moved to this new shop, and it was bigger, had an office, we had more space, and we were starting to get more people. And, it started out me working on all these trucks. Then this guy came on part-time, and it was really hard for me to wrench on trucks, but then also take phone calls, do parts ordering, do invoicing, and all the back office stuff. So I talked to my best friend growing up, Jonathan. He had worked at a large corporation for like 10 years and was kind of burnt out. And we had kind of jokingly talked about it, for the past 6 months. And I was like, yeah, maybe one day when I get bigger, you could come work for us. And called him up, and he started, I think June of 22, maybe something like that. So he took care of literally all the administrative stuff, all the back office stuff, parts ordering, invoicing, customer calls, emails, pretty much everything I didn't have time to do because I was wrenching, and turning out trucks. And so he was really my first true hire, W-2 guy. And he is just like the best guy ever and is super personable. Couldn't ask for a better guy. And then we kept growing, and we got to the point where we outgrew our second shop, and it was just really me and this one other guy, both part-time, but it was like we just had more work than we knew what to do with. And
so, Cole, let me pause you a second. When you say you outgrew the shop, is there just so many because there's only two of you?
Yeah.
So just too many trucks. You just can't fit them all.
So the biggest limit to that place was we put in our first lift in that shop. The ceilings were 12 feet, so I got a bin pack lift that was like a low pro that I got, and we had one lift in there, but there was really no way to put a second lift in there without really taking out room. And parking outside was not a lot, and so there was only so much we could do with one lift in that shop. And I was just like, I just kind of saw the writing on the wall and was like, we had to schedule out, 6 months because there was only so much we could get to. And when there's two guys and only one lift, it wasn't really going to fit. So how I found this place, it's kind of crazy. A guy I went to high school with, his grandfather owned this building and two others next door. And he actually, my buddy from high school, lives out in Utah, but he's been following me on Instagram, and we've kind of reconnected. And he was like, "Hey, do you remember the building my family has in Leeds? There's, it's been vacant for like 7 years. Do you guys need more space?" And so I was like, "I'm definitely interested." So I talked to his dad. He took me out here and we looked at it, and, it's just been a warehouse for them to pile all their crap in, and it looked terrible. And I was like, man, this has so much potential. And so this is our new shop in Leeds. If you know where the Buc-ee's is off I-20, we're like 5 minutes from there. The Buc-ee's coming to Alabama. That's big for here. So yeah, we just moved in March 1st. It's almost 9,000 square feet, and we've got 3 lifts in so far. We could put way more, but it's just got way more room to grow, and it's all fenced around, and we've got probably 2 acres or so outside. So we've got tons of room to park trucks outside.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a lot of work, moving a shop is a lot, but just getting all this set up from ground zero. But we're finally at the point where it's been great. But backtrack a little bit. One of the biggest challenges has been finding, especially in 2022, is just finding solid mechanics. That's been my biggest struggle I come from IT. I don't know anyone in the automotive industry, especially local. And so my biggest struggle has been finding mechanics. And about 2.5 months ago, I had a post on Mud. That's a long shot because there's just not that many local people that search on Mud that are in Birmingham who are looking to be a Land Cruiser mechanic. But I had called around, and kind of put feelers out with different people in the car community here. And one guy locally who also works on some cruisers and stuff gave me like 3 different guys to reach out to, and none of them were interested, but they gave me more names, and so I ended up hiring this one guy, Joseph, from one of the local Toyota dealerships. And he's a younger guy, 20, had gone through the T10 program, which is the Toyota and Lexus program you go through in college. And he's got a 3rd gen 4Runner and a 97 Tacoma. So he's like a big off-road guy too. And I'm like, this guy is literally perfect. Because my big thing, and we can get into this later, but like OTM to me is not just like a business. It's more of a community and a lifestyle. And so I want people that work here to like be in the lifestyle with us and, enjoy coming to work and go to events like G Smitter with us. And so he was an awesome fit. And then a month ago, I actually hired another guy from that same Toyota dealership that he's buddies with. So we've got 3 full-time guys now, and then my administrative guy. So we're getting to the point where we're getting some production out, which is great. I'm still probably looking for one more guy, but it is just, 6 months ago, the struggle was real, trying to find help.
Absolutely. So let me follow up on that since you've got 2 guys from the Toyota dealership now. So from a business perspective, has the plan always been to stay Land Cruiser specific? Because
yes.
it seems like there's a million Tacomas and 4Runners out there, if you want the business, but you're not interested in those.
We'll do, if we have time and people reach out, we've done some stuff on a lot of fifth gens, couple Tacomas, couple FJ Cruisers, but 95%, probably 97% of our business is Land Cruisers. And then Lexus LX and GX, we do a ton of those also.
Gotcha.
But, we just don't have, like I said, we're scheduled out right now where we just I don't have the time to go market to 4Runner and Tacoma guys. Maybe one day, but we just stay busy enough with Land Cruisers right now. And it's what I'm truly passionate about and love. And I would love to keep it that way. Maybe we'll open OTM 4Runner Tacomas one day. I don't know.
Well, but you said, in my day job, I work with a lot of businesses, a lot of family-owned businesses, and you made the comment earlier that you want it to be a lifestyle business, and part of that choice is saying this is our niche and this is what we do. Yep. And it's a lot of times when you go after that broader market, you lose that lifestyle aspect of it. So yep. I think as long as you can find enough Land Cruisers to keep coming in that shop, I think that's a good.
It's crazy. Birmingham is definitely a gold mine for Land Cruisers. It's insane. But we've also started to get a lot of people from out of state, people driving over from Mississippi, Atlanta, Tennessee, to come get work with us. So yeah, it's been awesome.
So on that community note, you were talking about those wrench days and the early days and kind of getting the band back together with the Dixie Land Cruisers group. So you've got a guy, he's got his first, he bought a 100 series because two of his buddies had one. He's never turned a wrench on it. And, he meets you at the barbecue and he's like, man, I want to do this. I want to lift this thing. I want to put these wheels on it. I want to be able to go to these off-road parks. How do you start that conversation where you kind of determine the scope, understand what it is they want to do, because there's an education process to that is what I'm getting at. And I know you're passionate about that. You're not going to just bolt parts on there if it doesn't make sense for that truck and for that customer.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite things, honestly, is when a new customer calls, and I've gotten to the point where Jonathan answers, 90% of them now, but I love just hearing people's story, of where they got their Land Cruiser or why they got into Land Cruisers. And most people it's, oh, my dad had one, or I had one in college, or, my grandfather had one. And so I love people's stories because I don't know, it's just kind of ingrained in me. I'm super passionate about Land Cruisers, and I try and treat our customers like their trucks like it's one of my own, and so sorry, I kind of got sidetracked. What was the question?
No, we were just talking about when that new customer approaches and trying to understand they may have an idea what they want the end product to be, but how you walk them through what they really need to get to that point.
Yeah. So one of the first questions I ask them is like, what's your ultimate goal? What do you want to do with this Land Cruiser? Because a lot of people, there's a decent amount of people that want to go to off-road parks and want to go, wheel their trucks. But, 90% of them want it to look cool and like maybe go on a Forest Service road, and it's a family hauler or they've got a baby or whatever. So it really, one of the first things I ask is just like, what are you trying to do with your truck and what's your ultimate dream and goal? And kind of go from there, because there's a decent amount of small niche vendors that make stuff for these trucks. The older ones, 40s and 60s, it's a little harder these days, but I feel like the 80s, 100s and 200s have a pretty good following. But, it's just, I don't have a preset set of questions. It's just qualifying questions, that I've kind of come up with over the, past couple years. And what I kind of try and do, especially if they're local, is to say, hey, we're scheduled out right now, but what I would love for you to do is bring your truck by and let's just go through it and talk about it in person. Because a lot of these guys have, they've written down stuff and researched stuff. Most of them don't come in completely blind, And so they'll bring it in and we'll do an inspection and just kind of talk through everything. And it's nice that we have a whole shop full of trucks where I can go, yeah, see, this truck has this and blah, 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 and kind of point out some things, which is really nice also.
Yeah, you've kind of got a showroom that's
we do.
It's all, and it's constantly changing too. I mean,
it's
inventory turnover. So
yeah, it's honestly every time I still pinch myself every time I walk in our new shop now with all these cruisers lined up. I'm just like, how is this real? It's so cool.
And for the viewers, Cole had his desk set up in the shop tonight, and it had an awesome background. There was probably 15 or 20 trucks, and I know he got them all lined up. But there was a barbecue going on, and there was an HVAC unit running, and we had to move the conversation into the office.
My 2.5-year-old.
Yeah.
It's all right.
That's awesome. So to switch gears a little bit from the background and the community and the story of OTM, let's get to the nuts and bolts of OTM. What is there a limit to what y'all offer? I mean, all the way from brake jobs to engine swaps. Do you stop at some point?
So I tell my customers we do anything and everything minus paint and body work. So yeah, brake jobs, oil changes, all the way up to engine swaps, transmission work, axle work, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we do not do paint and body, and that's not really something I want to get into. I just personally don't know anything about it, and just there's plenty of other places.
It's a different game. You can read a manual about how to swap an engine, but you can't really read a manual on how to do body work. It's touch and feels.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things you grow up learning how to do, because your dad had a shop.
Yeah.
And you think it's hard to find mechanics. Try finding a good body man. I mean,
no, I'm sure. Yeah,
it's a
just try and find a good body shop.
Yeah, you probably won't get recommended body guys because the guy that would be recommending you doesn't want you to take him from him.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say is the most common thing you're doing on cruisers? 90%, the bread and butter of your.
It completely depends on the series, but I actually wrote these down, and I'm going to give you kind of the most common service we do per series, which I think is pretty cool. So I'll start with a 200 and work our way down. So 200, I've probably done 50 leveling kits on 200 series. Valley plate leaks are very common, and valley plate leaks, radiators, and serpentine belt tensioner, that whole job. We do those a bunch on 200s. Hundreds, the most common thing is timing belt, water pump, and heater tees.
Yeah, I have 5 of those sitting in my garage right now from the past 2 months. So, yeah.
80 series would be head gaskets for sure, knuckle rebuilds, and then engine oil leaks. So oil pump cover, front main, rear main, distributor O-ring, cylinder, 60s and 40s kind of fall into the same thing. Carb rebuild, exhaust manifold gasket, knuckle rebuilds, oil pan gaskets. Those are really the most common things we see with 40s and 60s. But as far as most common mods and upgrades, not service and maintenance, I mean, I couldn't put a number on it, but we do tons of lifts, tons of front and rear bumpers, tires, winches, roof racks, lights, sliders. So we do all that stuff for every series,
Yeah. Is there one job that even though you enjoy having the job, when it comes through, you're like, here we go again?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Probably rear main seals.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's much nicer now that we have lifts, but I'm like, God, pulling a transmission, it's just one of those. Plus, like I said, I'm 6'7", so me getting under a truck, most of my other guys can walk under trucks, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, whenever people come in and I see that they have a rear main seal leak in my garage, at least I'm like,
yeah, you just wipe it off, and you're like, I didn't see anything. You're good.
Yeah, we're good. So you sent us over some pictures of your favorite restoration projects. Davey, I think you can throw those up if you just want to talk through those.
Hey, one other thing I did want to mention. So we get a pretty good mix of cruisers, but I'd say the cruiser, the 1 series that we work on the most. It's a toss up between 80s and 100s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like 40s and 60s have probably had work before because of their age. And
So
80s
they
and
have,
100s
but most of them, most 40s have had a restoration at some point. I use that very loosely because most of them are super shoddy, and it was 20 years ago. So yeah, it's just different.
I feel that. So tell us about this 40.
Yeah, so this is a 1979 FJ43. So it's a South American truck, and I know everyone has a stigma. It's a South American truck. But this one is kind of personal because it's actually my dad's truck, but we have had a long road with this thing. He bought it in 2019, maybe 2020. Bought it from a local guy who had imported a bunch of these, and he got a really good deal on it because he hadn't finished all the small stuff. Well, yeah, that's why he got a great deal on it, because it had a mountain full of small stuff that we've had to do. But the color it's like a heath gray with a tan top, and it's got kind of like basketball leather, that orangey interior. It's super, super nice. But mechanically, like, the whole thing's a piece of crap. So there's not much that we haven't replaced, from fuel lines, gas tanks, brakes, fixing oil leaks, fixing caster adjustments on the leaf springs, manifold gaskets. We've gone through this whole entire truck, and it's gotten to the point now. And I will say I've not made $1 off this truck because it's my dad. So, he pays for the parts, and I kind of fix it when we have time, but it's a special truck to us. So it's been pretty fun.
That's awesome.
It looks everywhere too. It's a really pretty truck.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can pull this. Yeah. What about this?
This is Tori's 62 we just finished. So Tori is a super cool guy. He's a military guy. He's had this 62 for, I don't know, a year or two. And we just did like a complete overhaul on this. It's got Donaldson MRR suspension. Those are new 35-inch. I think they're Kenda tires, 35 by 1050s. But we did a full mechanical rebuild on this, front knuckle rebuild, engine tune-up. We desmogged it. We put the Torfab LED headlights in it. And a whole bunch of different stuff, but it was one of those where it came in and sounded terrible and drove really bad, and he put some money and parts in it, and it's a super clean 62 in my opinion.
How long was that process?
Longer than he probably would have liked. It took a while for us to get to it. He actually got deployed. And had to come home. He had to come home early. And so he dropped it off. I don't know. It was probably in our shop for like 2 months or so, I would say.
It just takes a long time with these older trucks to really do it right.
It does.
I would say it's shocking how long it can drag on. Yeah,
we did like a complete cooling system refresh, and it's a 3FE. So I don't know if you guys ever worked on a 3FE, but there's a lot of stuff in the way and to get to, and just taking off old coolant hoses that have never been replaced, having a razor blade and, old coolant hoses off and get old Toyota hose clamps off that are all mangled. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say the parts lead time on the older stuff, you may spend a week waiting on something to come in because you're not going to go on Amazon and get it next day.
Right. Yeah, that's the biggest challenge with the older trucks is, certain parts availability for sure.
Yeah.
It's actually a good question that made me think, for stuff like coolant hoses, are you buying it from the dealer or are you getting like gates? So it's all
everything we can get at Toyota, but there's still plenty of coolant hoses they don't make. So we have to we usually go to a parts store and bring the old one and match it. And see if we can cut a certain section off this one preformed hose to make what we need. So there's a little bit of both.
Yeah,
we try and use Toyota, ASIN, Denso, all that wherever we can.
The OE or OEM for sure. Always. That's all I ever recommend, because honestly, these trucks destroy aftermarket parts.
Yeah, especially brakes. I definitely would recommend Toyota brakes.
Yeah,
because aftermarket brakes just I don't know. All right, so this is Adam's 62. This thing's super clean too, and I didn't really mean to put two 62s in here. I just don't have a lot of good pictures. Some notable mentions are also Zach's Tan 60 and John's green BJ 73. But so this is Adam's 62. He got this truck out of Washington and had just bought it, but he actually called us when this truck was being transported and was like, "Hey, I just bought this 62." He found it on mud, and we got it in, and he wanted us to do an inspection. Super nice truck, no rust. The paint's really nice. Interior is super nice, but you go and look underneath and like it's leaking from everywhere. And I'm like, man, I don't have great news for you. He overpaid for it, but it's a solid platform. So, I mean, I think we had 72 hours in this truck, pretty much tore the whole entire thing down, put a lift on it and tires. But yeah, it leaked from almost every single place you can imagine.
God.
So
72 hours.
And we turned this thing around, I think, in like 2 weeks because he needed it back. It's actually his daily driver. And so, yeah, it was kind of like full hands on deck. Yeah, and this is at our second shop, by the way.
Love it. What wheels are those?
I think those are 1552. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
I think.
Like the analog HDs or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Amazing.
Hey, while we're looking at the side of the building here, who came up with the logo?
Oh, okay. So my wife's sister has a friend she went to college with. I think they were roommates. Her name's Molly, but she's a graphic designer. She lives in Arkansas, and she came up with our logo, and I love it. She did a great
perfect.
job.
She nailed it. Yeah,
she did. Yeah, and so we had that lettering is. We took all that down. Obviously, it's not painted on. It's made out of acrylic or whatever, and we haven't hung it up on our new shop because we're gonna paint the exterior and do some stuff. So I'm waiting to do that before we hang up the sign.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about parts availability and that sometimes being a hiccup along the way. Do you have any other challenges along the way in restoring older cruisers that might be more difficult than parts availability?
Yeah, I think just, time frame. Fortunately, most of our customers are like, oh yeah, I'm like, hey, we're scheduled out, like several months. And they're like, I'll just drop it off and you can keep it. And at first I was like, yeah, okay, no problem. But now I'm like, yeah, let's just pump the brakes on that, because we get to the point where it's just like, it gives me anxiety driving in and seeing all these trucks outside just sitting, So yeah, I would just say time frame of, start to finish of trying to get all the parts in. And then, I'd say that's a challenge for sure. It's just time.
That makes sense. I've had, I think, 400s in my driveway, and I don't have any sort of a large shop, just a 2-car garage.
Yeah,
and it's difficult when you get into something and you're like, all right, I'm just going to do this, and then you take it apart and you're like, ooh, okay, we're going to need to buy this part. That's
now it's a lawn ornament, and it can't
exactly. And the wife's like, I want my garage back, things like that. So engine swaps. How many have you done? What's the hot swap? What?
So we've done an LS swap. It seems like a lot of people like LS swaps. Mm-hmm. We're in the middle of doing a Toyota diesel swap and an 80 right now. It's a 1H DFT, which is going to be super cool. Mm-hmm. And then we've got a 55 in the shop that we're swapping out the 1F 3-speed and transfer case in for a 60 or late 40 drivetrain, which is a 2F 5-speed and a split case, and then do power steering. And then, I've got personal project trucks too that I would love to do swaps on, but man, the hard thing with engine swaps is right now is just the manpower. Cause we have so much service maintenance and outfitting work that there's only so many, we've got 2 active ones right now, and 3 more scheduled out in the next few months. But it's really that's been another challenge, is trying to find the balance of working on those engine swaps while also maintaining the pipeline of our regular scheduled service maintenance and outfitting work.
Yeah, engine swaps they're tough because if it's fuel injected, you're dealing with all the wiring related to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that you typically can't buy off the shelf. And if there is an off the shelf option, it's extremely expensive. So
yeah,
it's not something that you can churn and burn, like get into a flow and just knock out timing belts and water pumps on hundreds. It's
right.
It's time and effort and planning and a lot of wiring and maybe some fab. And speaking of fabrication, are y'all doing custom fabrication to fit those?
We do. So we do fab work. We're not like building custom bumpers and stuff, but we do tons of 62s with 5-speed swaps. So we, fab all the transmission cross member brackets. And especially when you do engine swaps, you have to do the same thing, engine mounts.
Mm-hmm.
We do body mount chops, like for GXs and stuff. We've done some of those. So things here and there, we don't build bumpers. We'll do, if it's a weld your own kit, like a 4x4 labs or whatever, we'll weld that. But we're not, like designing and building anything from scratch.
Yeah, that's along the same lines of engine swaps, where there's a lot of time and effort beyond just the wrenching that you have to put in.
For sure.
And then last question on engine swaps. You mentioned the diesel swap for the Cruiser, which was a factory swap in, maybe not offered in North America.
Right.
Would you prefer to diesel swap all Cruisers with the torque?
For sure. I'm a huge diesel guy. I daily drive a 1992 HDJ 81, so it's a right-hand drive inline 6 turbo diesel. It's an automatic, factory lockers, and it's like changed my life. It's so much fun. I've had probably like 3 regular gas 80s, and they're great. But man, diesel Cruiser is pretty fun, and it's got an aftermarket G turbo on it. With some more boost in fuel, so it's pretty fun. It'll haul the mail pretty good.
So what is it about the diesel swaps and the diesel engines that makes it so much better for the Cruiser? Is it the torque off road?
Yeah, the torque off road, it really does make a huge difference. But man, I love the smell of diesel. It's weird. Some people hate it, some people love it. But I don't want to say it's necessarily better. There's diesel guys and there's not diesel guys, but especially like mechanical diesels, because there's fuel injected, the injection pumps are electronically controlled, like the 1HD FTE that was in the late model 80 and the 100 series. But then like you get into some of the Prados and stuff, like the 2 LTEs, the little inline 4s, and the 1KZT E, and anything electric. They're great, but a mechanical diesel is pretty hard to beat for reliability.
Do you run into any difficulties with parts availability on those?
It is a little tougher, but we utilize Partsuk, Amayama, those across the pond companies, and most of it's pretty. We've got a pretty good resource of even guys we work with in Canada and Japan and stuff to source parts. So it's really not as hard as people think.
Yeah, one of my favorite things in like helping people buy parts is introducing them to Partsuk. Like, this $200
and it's
part
crazy
is
fast
$30.
Yeah, I know, and it's
you get it from Dubai in like 3 days. Yeah,
I know. And it's faster sometimes than our freaking local Toyota dealer can get parts.
Yes,
actually, that's 100% the truth. Yeah.
So this is Zach 60. That's one I wanted to mention, but this guy's local. We did a full interior and exterior restore on this, and a whole bunch of mechanical stuff. But it's a really nice truck. I think it's out of Colorado. It's got 130,000 miles on it. It's really nice. We did a full carpet kit, a full audio upgrade, stereo speakers.
That's pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty. I love that color interior.
Yeah, it's simple,
beautiful.
Yeah, it's just perfect for that period.
Yeah.
Matches the exterior so well.
And it's got the sliding rear windows in the back, which is super rare. So those are pretty cool.
Wow. So Cole, when you moved to Birmingham, we've talked about Dixieland. We've talked about how the chapter kind of came back together. So what does Dixieland and really the OTM community look like today? You mentioned that you've got vehicles coming in from Georgia, from Tennessee, from all around. Are you at the point that that you have people that are shipping trucks in that they're not physically coming to the shop? Are
We
you
do.
shipping trucks in and out? Okay,
Yeah.
so all over the Southeast,
hmm
anybody can utilize you.
We can. Yeah. Anybody. Yeah. I'm trying to think. We've got one guy. We've got a one owner 1040, kind of like this one, but it's got 36,000 original miles. And the guy actually lives in Washington State. But his son found out about us, he's in the military, and he's stationed down in Montgomery, which is like an hour and a half south of us. So he actually brought us the truck. And I think that was like almost a 90-hour build on that thing that we've completely redone everything in. So yeah, we get people from all over.
So if somebody's watching this and they're 8 hours away from you and they're like, that's the guy, that's the shop, that's where I want to send my truck, can you help them with the logistics of getting the truck there and back to them safely? Because
For
that's
sure, yeah.
a scary part of it for a lot of people.
It is, yeah. So we've got a few good logistics companies that we work with. But if it's local, I mean, not local enough, but if it's not super far, I mean, that's our car hauler. But we've got guys that can go pick up, a guy that works for us that'll go pick up your truck personally too. So we're pretty flexible.
All right. As we wrap up here, we've got 5 rapid fire questions. Okay. First thing that comes to mind. So number 1, and there's no scenario of if it was this or this, that. It's got to be one or the other. So for off-roading, manual or automatic?
I'd say automatic. I've wheeled both a lot, and automatics are just so much easier.
I'm in that camp as well. Yeah.
Same. Yeah. Stick's fun, but I just kind of want to wheel. First car you ever owned?
2-door Tahoe.
Oh, a 2-door. Okay.
Mm-hmm. It was pretty cool. I mean, I was your typical high school guy. I had a body lift on like 36-inch super swampers, loud exhaust. I was that guy. Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, I'll see a clean one around town. I'm like, shoot, I wish I still had that thing. I actually LS swapped that thing in college because the 350 blew. We pulled out the whole entire, like, you should have seen my apartment. It was just strewn with just parts everywhere. That was probably when I figured I had a problem, but it was pretty cool. And so I was into GM stuff at first. So I had that 2-door Tahoe, LS swapped it, sold it, and then bought a GMC 2500 that had the 6.0 gas motor in it and put a supercharger on it, and then sold that and put a turbo on it. So I dabbled in that. I've got a pretty good background in LS stuff, but then, it's Toyota ever since.
It's all the dark side.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I grew up in that.
That 40 flipping it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we showed this a couple
That was at 1:30 in the morning. That was fun.
Jeez.
Yeah. Didn't get off the trail until 4:30. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up around the GM stuff as well, and my brother and I did an LS swap on my 95 3/4 ton Chevrolet. That's been 20 years ago now, but before there was off the shelf plug and play harnesses and all that stuff, we were going through the schematic, and it was fun times. All right, favorite Land Cruiser color?
Man, it's probably, I had a 9680 in that really dark blue. I can't remember the name of it. It's the early hundreds. Well, actually, I think it was 98 to like mid 2000s. They had the same blue in the 100 series, and even the LX570 now has that. It's like a dark midnight blue. I love that color.
Yeah, that's sharp. Yeah,
I can't remember the name, the specific paint code, but that's my favorite probably.
One tool you cannot live without in your shop?
Oh man, probably a 1/2 inch electric impact.
Milwaukee?
No, it's DeWalt. It has like
Yes.
I think 1,600 foot-pounds or something. I'm not a huge Milwaukee guy. I've got a 1/2-inch DeWalt impact, but then like my ratchets and stuff are Snap-on. I've had a couple Milwaukee ratchets and they both broke, and I'm just meh.
All right, next question.
Yeah. Milwaukee's great. I just hadn't had great luck with them.
Black and yellow. All right.
You would be disgusted at the amount of Milwaukee tools that I have in my garage.
Yeah. They make good stuff.
So if the Land Cruiser doesn't exist, or Toyotas in general for that matter, and you've got to have a shop that works on one other type of vehicle, what's it going to be?
I wouldn't do it.
Ooh, wow.
Honestly, I wouldn't do it. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say GM, considering the two-door Blazer.
No, if it's not Land Cruisers, I'm not doing it.
Well, and you know, it goes back to what you said, right? The cruiser world is a community. It's not just a commodity.
I tell people it's a cult. It has a cult following, you know, but like not in a weird, bad way, you know. But people, it's just, I love hearing people's stories. We've had so many people bring us, specifically 60s, really. But like, hey, this has sat in my garage for 7 years or 10 years, and you know, my grandfather bought it new from the local Toyota dealership, and you know, I'm getting it ready for my 16-year-old to drive, or you know, this car hadn't run in 5 to 7 years, but I want to get it ready, you know, to drive again, and blah, blah, blah. And I love that, you know, it's super cool. But yeah, it's hard to not find a person who owns a Land Cruiser that's got, you know, a cool story about it or how they got into it.
All right. Well, I think we've covered just about everything. Cole, thank you for coming on and telling us about the shop and the story. It is definitely a unique story. You know, you said something early on. You said, I didn't really sit down and plan this business. It just kind of evolved. So in some ways, it sounds like you broke all the rules of building a successful company, but you've certainly done so.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So if folks are watching this, there's a few things. Obviously, your Instagram at OTM Cruisers, otmcruisers.com. But you mentioned before you've got some YouTube videos up, I believe, with some walkarounds of some of your projects they can check out.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of videos, but yeah, if you want to check out the tan 60 or that white 62 with the stripes, we've got a couple walk-around videos of that and some other stuff. I've got a couple how-to videos on there. I'd like to get more into YouTube this year, but you know, it's a whole nother job doing social media, and I just, as much as I want to, I just don't have the time.
Yeah, it'll triple the time.
Yeah, here's this 60 right here on the trailer. This is our latest project. It's sat since like 2017, and we pressure washed it last week. So satisfying. You know, washing off like 7 years of dirt and grime and just nastiness. But
this was my favorite part, watching it, the hood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually cleaned up really nice, surprisingly. But yeah, we're doing like a lift 5-speed swap, full, you know, mechanical. The whole entire engine's getting redone, axles, brakes, the whole shebang. But anyways, thank you guys so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully we'll do it again. You guys need to come down to the shop next time.
We're going to come down to the shop. And folks, as always, if you've got a ride that you would like to see featured on our Reader's Ride segment, whether it's a cruiser or not a cruiser, you can submit that at overlandweekly.com, and you just might get it on the show. So, Cole, thank you again, and we'll see you. We'll see you in person here at G-Smitter in just a few weeks. So, if you're watching this and you're going to be at G-Smitter, holler at us. Thanks, guys.
Stay tuned. We're going to be announcing a project that we're going to be getting ready for G-Smitter coming up in the next week or so. So we're kind of going to do like a mini build off. We tried to do that last year, ran into some issues, but so stay tuned.
Cool.
Awesome. Great to have you on.
Thanks
guys.